Welcome, the anointed ones. When you stop shrinking to fit in, you start expanding to take over. Read that again. Because something wild is happening right now, and if you're one of the chosen ones, you can feel it in your bones. You've got a brand new attitude, and it looks so damn good on you. No more people-pleasing, no more apologizing for your existence like it's a bad Wi-Fi signal. We're done performing emotional CPR on relationships that flatlined years ago. Fact. According to a psychological study from the University of California, chronic people-pleasing is often linked to trauma-based survival instincts, not kindness. So, turns out you weren't just being nice. You were negotiating your worth, but not anymore. This isn't just a glow-up. This is a soul shift. You're no longer chasing validation like it's a clearance sale at Target. You're walking different, talking different, making people nervous, and rightfully so. You've gone from agreeable to unstoppable, from being their comfort zone to becoming your own revolution. So buckle up, because this isn't just a new chapter, it's a plot twist. And the chosen ones? We're not here to fit in anymore. We're here to disrupt. Number one, you've realized approval is a currency of control. You've realized approval is a currency of control. That's the kind of truth that doesn't hit gently. It punches you in the gut. For the longest time, you thought being liked meant you were doing something right. You tried to be easy to love, easy to handle, easy to forgive, even when it hurt. You smiled through discomfort, stayed silent through disrespect, and convinced yourself that if you were just nicer, people would finally value you. But deep down, something always felt off. Like you were constantly giving but never truly receiving. Now you know why. Approval was the leash. It was never love. It was leverage. When people sensed you needed their validation, they used it to shape you. Suddenly your choices weren't really yours. You started dressing, speaking, posting, and living in ways that made others comfortable. Not because you wanted to, but because you didn't want to lose their favor. You didn't even notice it at first. It felt normal, even noble. But slowly, you became a version of yourself built on other people's expectations. And the worst part? You thought it was your personality. Now you see it clearly. That constant need for approval was never about connection. It was about control. People knew that as long as you feared rejection, you'd bend, you'd sacrifice, you'd stay. But now, that part of you is gone. You no longer trade pieces of your soul for a pat on the back. You don't need applause to feel seen. You've stopped performing for people who were never clapping for the real you anyway. The moment you stopped chasing approval, you started attracting respect. Not everyone likes this new version of you, and that's the point. You're no longer for everyone because you finally become someone real, someone honest, someone free. Approval no longer seduces you because control no longer owns you. And that shift, that's the beginning of everything. Number two, your absence will now offend those who fed off your presence. Your absence now offends people who used to feed off your presence. And not because they miss you, but because they miss what you used to give them. Your time, your energy, your endless yes. You were their emotional charger, their therapist, their unpaid hype squad. You were always available, always understanding, always willing to bend, until one day you weren't. And that's when everything changed. You started pulling back, protecting your energy, saying no, choosing yourself. And suddenly people got quiet. The same people who loved you when you were constantly overextending are now distant, cold, even salty. But why? Because your new boundaries exposed their old dependencies. It was never about mutual love or respect. It was about how much they could take without having to give. And when the giving stopped, so did their loyalty. The truth is, some people weren't attached to you. They were attached to the version of you that made their lives easier. You gave them comfort. You were their emotional sponge. But the moment you started prioritizing your peace, they saw it as betrayal. Not because you hurt them, but because you stopped letting them use you as their bandage. You were never allowed to be tired, never allowed to be unavailable. Your worth was measured by your usefulness. Now that you've stepped back, you're realizing how loud the silence gets when you stop playing your old role. That silence, that awkward shift, it's not punishment. It's clarity. It's proof that some connections only existed because you carried all the weight. And now that you've put it down, They have no reason to stay. Good, let them leave. Because the people who really value you won't be offended by your growth. They won't flinch when you set boundaries. They won't disappear when you stop overgiving. The ones who truly care, they'll meet you where you are. The rest, they were only ever there for the version of you that forgot you mattered too. Number 3, you're no longer a mirror for their insecurities. You're no longer a mirror for their insecurities. That alone has shifted everything. You used to hold space for everyone's discomfort, dimming your light so others could feel okay in their shadow. You shrunk your wins, softened your voice, filtered your truth, all to avoid making someone else feel small. You weren't trying to be fake. You were trying to be safe. Because when people feel threatened, they get mean. So you learned to take up less space, not because it was right, but because it kept things peaceful. But peace at your own expense isn't peace. It's self-erasure. And now that you're done doing that, the tension is rising. People who once praised your humility now say you've changed. People who felt confident around your silence now feel uncomfortable with your power. The problem was never your confidence, it was their insecurity. And when you stopped dimming to match their low voltage, you became a problem. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just no longer contorting yourself to protect fragile egos. And let's be honest, some people only liked you better when you were doubting yourself. You were easier to manage, less threatening, more relatable. But the truth is they weren't relating, they were projecting. They didn't want to rise with you, they wanted you to stay where they could understand you. Now that you're elevating, they're exposed. Not by you saying anything, but by you no longer hiding. It's not your job to make people feel comfortable in their stagnancy. You don't need to play small to make others feel tall. Your growth isn't arrogance, your confidence isn't cruelty. And your truth isn't a threat unless it's exposing a lie someone's still trying to live in. You're not their mirror anymore. You're not their emotional cushion. You're not responsible for how your shine makes someone else squint. You've stopped being the background in someone else's story and stepped into your own spotlight. And if that makes people uncomfortable, so be it. Growth is uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. Number 4, your no is a complete sentence and a sacred act. Your no is a complete sentence. And now, it's sacred, not defensive, not angry, not laced with guilt, just solid, clear, and final. It took you a long time to realize that every time you added a reason, a sorry, or a soft excuse after your no, you were making yourself smaller to keep someone else comfortable. You weren't just setting boundaries. You were asking permission to have them. And that's not how power works. You used to over-explain because you didn't want to seem rude, selfish, or ungrateful. But deep down, it wasn't about manners, it was fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as difficult. So you bent, and bent, and bent, until you were a version of yourself you barely recognized. Someone agreeable on the outside, but resentful on the inside. But that version of you is gone. You've stopped turning your boundaries into negotiations. You've stopped layering your truth in soft words just to be palatable. Because now you know, when you explain too much, you give people room to debate what should be non-negotiable. And that's how you slowly teach them that your no is flexible, that your peace is up for discussion. Not anymore. Now, when you say no, it's with the same energy you used to say yes. Calm, confident, without flinching. You don't owe anyone your availability. You don't owe them your time, your energy, your emotional labor. You are not a service, you're a soul. And every time you honor your boundaries, you're telling the world, and yourself, that your needs matter. Some people will call it selfish. Let them. That says more about their entitlement than your evolution, because the old you said yes to stay liked. The new you says no to stay whole. And that shift? That's not attitude, it's alignment. Number 5, you've stopped auditioning for rooms you were born to own. You've stopped auditioning for rooms you were born to own. You're no longer dressing yourself in humility just to be palatable or waiting for someone to hand you permission to show up fully. That version of you, the one who tiptoed, over-prepared, second-guessed every word, waited for applause before speaking, is gone. Dead and buried. Now you walk in knowing you belong. Not because someone said so, but because you finally said it to yourself. You used to make yourself small in the presence of power, thinking if you were quiet enough, humble enough, agreeable enough, they'd let you stay. You studied the room before speaking, made sure not to take up too much time or space, tried to earn your worth like it was a prize to win. But that's what no one told you. Worth isn't earned. It's remembered. And once you remembered yours, everything shifted. Now you enter spaces knowing you have something to offer. You don't shrink when others shine. You don't fake humility to avoid being too much. You're not loud, you're solid. You don't compete, you create. Because when you realize you were born to lead, you stop performing for approval and start showing up with presence. And yes, people will be uncomfortable. They'll try to read you as arrogant, try to humble you with silence, try to make you question your confidence. Let them try. You're not here to fit into systems that were built on keeping people like you unsure of themselves. You're here to dismantle them with your presence alone. You no longer knock because you own your identity. You've built your own door, your own lane, your own table, and if there's no seat, you're not asking for one. You've stopped hoping to be noticed and started knowing you're undeniable. And when that kind of clarity walks into a room, everything has to shift. Number 6. Your healing triggered their hidden wounds. Your healing triggered their hidden wounds, and you weren't even trying to. You were just choosing peace, choosing growth, choosing yourself. But suddenly, the people who were once so supportive when you were struggling have gone silent. The ones who checked in when you were crying don't clap when you're winning. The vibe shifted, the energy got weird, and at first you questioned yourself. Did I change too much? Am I doing something wrong? No, you're just not broken anymore. And that makes some people deeply uncomfortable. There are people who felt safe around your pain because it made them feel useful, powerful, or even better about their own unhealed lives. When you were hurting, you were relatable, manageable. But the moment you started setting boundaries, owning your worth, and letting go of old patterns, it threatened their comfort. Not because your growth is wrong, but because it reminded them they're still stuck. Your healing holds up a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see in their reflection. They like the version of you that doubted yourself because that version didn't challenge them. That version didn't hold them accountable. That version allowed them to stay small without question. But the new you, you're glowing, you're grounded, you're unavailable for dysfunction. And that scares people who secretly hoped you'd stay at their level. You'll notice who really had love for you and who just had comfort in your chaos. Some were never cheering you on. They were cheering on the fact that you needed them, that you didn't outgrow them. But now that you're healing, shining, and speaking a new language, they can't understand you anymore. So they disappear. Let them. Because anyone who only felt connected to your brokenness was never really connected to you. Your growth doesn't need validation, it needs protection, and that's exactly what you're giving it now. Number 7. You're done with emotional bartering. You're done with emotional bartering. No more trading your peace just to keep the room calm. No more handing out your energy like coupons, hoping someone might return it with love, validation, or a crumb of appreciation. That old habit of doing the most for the least, it's expired. You finally saw it for what it was, survival, not connection. You used to believe that if you made people happy, they'd protect you. That if you stayed useful, agreeable, always available, they'd never leave. So you twisted yourself into 1,000 different shapes just to fit what they needed in the moment. You became a mind reader, a fixer, a yes machine, all while your own needs sat on the back burner. You weren't giving out of abundance, you were giving from fear. But now you see how exhausting that game is, because emotional bartering is just self-abandonment with a smile. You were handing over your joy in exchange for temporary security. You weren't receiving love. You were renting it and paying with your mental health. You've outgrown that whole system. You no longer feel guilty for not being everything to everyone. You don't measure your worth by how many people you please or how few boundaries you have. Your happiness is no longer something you have to earn by sacrificing yourself. It just is. And anyone who needs you to be in pain so they can feel powerful doesn't deserve access to it. This isn't selfishness, it's sobriety. You've stepped out of the emotional casino where everything was a gamble, and nothing was guaranteed. You no longer overgive hoping to be seen. You no longer shrink, accommodate, or overcompensate for your existence. Now, you give from a place of choice, not desperation. You show up because you want to, not because you're afraid not to. That shift, that's the end of emotional bartering. That's the beginning of emotional freedom. Number 8. Silence isn't golden anymore. It was a muzzle. Silence isn't golden anymore. It was a muzzle. For too long, you wore quiet like armor. Not because you didn't have something to say, but because you were taught that speaking up made you difficult, dramatic, or too much. You swallowed your truth to keep the peace, not realizing that all you were really doing was protecting other people's comfort while sacrificing your own clarity. But peace that costs your voice is just another form of self-abandonment. And eventually that silence didn't feel noble. It felt suffocating. You started to notice how every time you bit your tongue, your body kept the score, the tension, the anxiety, the resentment. All that energy had to go somewhere, and it landed right back in you. You weren't just silencing yourself, you were slowly disappearing. Now you're done playing quiet to keep things calm. You've realized that real peace isn't built on silence, it's built on truth, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's messy, even if your voice trembles. You'd rather speak up and be misunderstood than stay silent and be invisible. And yes, some people won't like this new version of you. They like the version that didn't challenge the room, that let things slide, that smiled and nodded even when your gut screamed otherwise. But that wasn't peace. That was you biting down on your own boundaries. Now you've unclenched your jaw. Now you speak. You speak even if it makes the room uncomfortable. You speak even if someone rolls their eyes or calls you sensitive. Because staying silent to avoid conflict only created a war inside you, and you're done being the battlefield. You've realized your voice was never the problem, other people's need for control was. So you're done being quiet to keep their version of peace. From now on, your truth gets airtime. Not just when it's convenient, but when it matters. Because your voice is no longer a threat, it's your freedom. Number 9. You don't chase, you align. You don't chase anymore, you align. That constant sprint after love, approval, or validation that once felt like survival, it's over. You used to exhaust yourself trying to fit in, to be enough, to be wanted. You thought if you ran faster, tried harder, gave more, you could catch what you needed. But chasing is exhausting, and it always leaves you empty. Now something different is happening. Instead of running after people or approval, you're standing still and letting what truly belongs to you find you. You've done the work on yourself, healed the cracks, silenced the inner critic, and learned to love the person in the mirror without conditions. That healing changed your energy. It made you magnetic in a way chasing never could. You attract people, opportunities, and experiences that reflect who you really are now. The ones that vibe with your truth don't have to be begged for or convinced. They show up naturally, like a mirror, recognizing its own reflection. And the rest? When something or someone resists your new glow, it's not rejection, it's redirection. It's the universe saying, this isn't for you, keep moving forward. That shift is everything. Chasing kept you stuck in fear and scarcity, always questioning your worth. Aligning means trusting that what belongs in your life will come with ease, respect, and authenticity. You don't have to prove your value anymore because you know it. You're no longer willing to settle for crumbs or to dim your light to fit someone else's expectations. Alignment is the quiet confidence of knowing you don't have to chase love or acceptance. They chase you. And that's the ultimate power, not forcing connection, but being so unapologetically you that the right ones can't help but gravitate your way. Number 10. You've realized nice is often the mask of the afraid. You've realized that nice was often just a mask for fear. For too long you were polite to the point of disappearing. You said yes when every part of you screamed no. You smiled through exhaustion, nodded through disrespect, and carried other people's burdens like they were your own. All because you were scared, scared of conflict, scared of rejection, scared of being seen as difficult. So you wrapped yourself in kindness, hoping it would protect you from all those things. But kindness without boundaries isn't kindness, it's self-betrayal. When you don't protect your energy, your time, your feelings, being nice becomes a form of emotional self-harm. You lose sight of who you are beneath all the people-pleasing. You start to wonder if your needs matter at all. You become so focused on making others comfortable that you forget to make room for your own truth. Now you're done with that. You'd rather be misunderstood than manipulated. You'd rather risk a few awkward conversations than keep sacrificing your peace for the illusion of harmony. You've learned that true strength isn't in bending until you break. It's in standing firm even when it's uncomfortable. Being nice used to feel like safety, but now it feels like a trap. You know that real kindness starts with respect for yourself, and that means saying no when you mean no. It means speaking up when something feels off. It means choosing your own well-being over others' fleeting approval. You're not rude and you're not mean. You're honest. You're clear. And that clarity scares some people, but it frees you, because you've stopped confusing fear with kindness, and in that distinction, you've found your power. Number 11. You're not mean. They're just used to you being a doormat. You're not mean. People are just used to you being a doormat. For so long you softened your edges, swallowed your nose, and hid your boundaries under layers of please and sorry. That version of you was always available, always accommodating, always easy to push around. You became the default, yes, the safe harbor for everyone else's storms. But that wasn't kindness, it was surrender. Now, with this new attitude, you're not being arrogant or harsh, you're being restored. You're reclaiming space, voice, and self-respect that was quietly taken from you. You're not colder or less caring. You're clearer. You've traded confusion for conviction, chaos for calm, and people who thrived in your uncertainty for those who respect your certainty. That clarity burns. It makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to confront how much they took without asking. It rattles those who depended on your compliance to feel in control. It disrupts old power dynamics that kept you small and invisible. But your job isn't to keep everyone comfortable, it's to keep yourself whole. The truth is, people mistook your kindness for weakness. They confused your silence for consent. They took your boundaries as suggestions rather than rules. And now that you've drawn the line firmly, their discomfort looks like anger or judgment. But it's really just resistance to change. You're not mean. You're not the problem. You're the solution, the voice of your own worth finally spoken aloud. And while some may push back, the ones who matter will step up, listen, and meet you with the respect you always deserved. Because clarity is a gift, even if it stings at first. Number 12. You don't need to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. You don't need to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. For so long you waited for someone else to validate your value, whether it was approval from family, friends, bosses, or society at large. You hung on to every nod, every compliment, every invitation like it was a lifeline. You believed your worth depended on being picked, praised, or noticed by others. That waiting left you stuck in limbo, always hoping someone would finally see you for who you really are. But now you've realized the truth. You were the one you were waiting for all along. You don't need someone else's permission to exist fully or to claim your space. You've stopped outsourcing your worth to other people's opinions, and that shift is revolutionary. It means you no longer bend to fit their expectations or shrink to avoid their judgment. You're no longer an understudy in your own life, waiting in the wings for a cue. Choosing yourself means taking responsibility for your happiness, your boundaries, your growth. It's about saying, I am enough, without waiting for a crowd to agree. It means waking up every day and deciding that you deserve your own respect, your own love, and your own commitment, even on the days when the world looks the other way. This choice isn't selfish, it's radical self-care. It's the foundation of every healthy relationship you'll build going forward, because you start from a place of wholeness, not neediness. When you've chosen yourself, you show up with confidence, clarity, and the fierce knowledge that your value is not negotiable. So stop waiting to be picked. You've already chosen yourself, and that makes you unstoppable. Number 13. You've made peace with being misunderstood. You've made peace with being misunderstood. When you were people-pleasing, your entire world revolved around being seen as good, nice, or easy to like. You bent over backward to fit everyone else's narrative of who you should be, desperate for approval and afraid that any misstep would cost you their acceptance. That need to be liked controlled your every word and move, chaining you to a role that wasn't truly yours. But now you're done with that exhausting performance. You've embraced a powerful truth. You'd rather be true than liked. You've accepted that not everyone will understand your journey, your choices, or your new boundaries, and that's okay. Because their misunderstanding doesn't define you. Their opinion isn't your reality. You're no longer living for the applause of others or the fleeting comfort of fitting in. You're living to honor your own story, your own values, and your own growth. If that means some people cast you as the villain in their story, you're fine with that. You know you can't rewrite their script, and you don't have to. This piece is liberating. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of people-pleasing and self-doubt. It gives you the courage to stand firm, even when the room gets quiet or the stares come. Because being misunderstood isn't failure. It's a sign you're evolving beyond old limitations and stepping fully into your truth. You've stopped shrinking to fit their expectations. Instead, you're growing into your own power, no matter who feels threatened by it. And that kind of peace? It's worth any misunderstanding. Number 14. You're finally protecting the version of you that used to beg for protection. You're finally protecting the version of you that used to beg for protection. For years, that part of you was vulnerable, overlooked and silenced, constantly asking for safety, kindness, and respect, but rarely receiving it. You carried the weight of being unseen, unheard, and unguarded, often defending others while leaving yourself exposed. That old you survived on hope and tolerance, not because it wanted to settle, but because it had no choice. Now, everything has changed. This new attitude you carry isn't about ego or bravado, it's about justice. You've become the fierce guardian of your own well-being, the defender of your boundaries, the champion of your worth. Where once you begged for protection, you now claim it. You're no longer waiting for someone else to step in. You're standing up for yourself in ways that your past self could only dream of. This shift is sacred because it's a promise kept to the part of you that was vulnerable and scared. By protecting yourself now, you honor the struggles, the pain, and the silence of your past. You give that version of you the strength and safety it was denied. This is more than self-care, it's self-redemption. Nothing is more sacred than keeping that promise to yourself. When you protect your energy, your time, and your peace, you're rewriting your story. You're showing up fully in your life, not as a victim or a shadow, but as a warrior who's earned every inch of peace and power. That protection isn't just survival, it's a declaration that you matter. And from here on out, you'll never let yourself be anything less than fiercely, unapologetically guarded. You've stepped into a new realm where your worth is non-negotiable, your voice undeniable, and your peace fiercely protected. This isn't just an attitude shift, it's a revolution within you, a reclaiming of everything that was once lost to fear, doubt, and people-pleasing. You've traded old chains for armor forged in self-respect and clarity. The path ahead won't always be easy, but it will always be authentic. Remember, you no longer ask for permission to exist fully because you've chosen yourself first, and that choice changes everything. So walk boldly, speak fiercely, and live unapologetically, because this new you isn't just surviving, you're thriving, owning your space and shining in ways that demand the world adjust to your light. This is your era. Own it, without hesitation. If this message resonated with you, don't just let it sit. Take action. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful insights that fuel your growth. Like this video if you're ready to own your power. Comment below with your own breakthroughs or struggles. Let's build a community that lifts each other up. And share this with someone who needs to hear it too. Your journey matters, and together we rise stronger. God bless you. God bless.